From underneath the trees, we watch the sky, confusing stars, the satellites. I never dreamed that you'd be mine, but here we are, we're here tonight, singing, amen, I'm alive, singing, amen, I am alive. Died and I'm singing, amen,
And welcome to a special edition of Overdrive. I am your host, Kyle Magda, and tonight we're going to start a brand new series called Monday Memories, going back into the history of NASCAR within the last 20 years. And actually 1993 was a big year in NASCAR, and really the year before that, 1992, the end of the year was the 1992 Hooters 500, and was really a changing of the guard that year. And really, that was a really turning point because it was Richard Petty's final race, and also a young Jeff Gordon's first Cup race ever, driving the number 24 DuPont Chevrolet. And also, there were 5 or 6 drivers heading into that race that had a chance at winning the championship. Davey Allison just came off the week before winning at Phoenix, and really, he was the favorite. I mean, he won at Talladega in the spring that year in 92, and had Bill Elliott not far behind, and Alan Kulwicki, the Underbird, as they called him. And that race, just how it started, now, midway through the race, actually, Davey Allison actually couldn't avoid a spinning Ernie Irvan and got in his wreck and could not keep going, and really just took out his chances of winning the championship. And really, it was down between Bill Elliott and Alan Kulwicki for the title. And Bill Elliott winds up going to winning the race, and Alan Kulwicki finishes second. The funny part about that is laps led, because Alan Kulwicki led 104, but Bill Elliott led 103, which means he got the extra 5 points that gave him the championship, because if Bill Elliott won the race and had the most points, they would have tied and would have won because of the tiebreaker. But the Underbird pulled it off after a miraculous comeback, coming down from 278 points with 6 races to go. That is amazing. But that's how it ended in the end, and Alan Kulwicki was your 1992 champion. Now, 93 started off pretty interesting. Now, going into Speed Weeks, of course, the big story is Dale Earnhardt finally going to win the Daytona 500 this year? And in 1990, he was so close to winning, but leading going into turn 4 in the last lap, had a tire go down, and Derek Cope, out of nowhere, took the win. And that was just a heartbreak for Dale Earnhardt, who's pretty much up to this point has won every single race at Daytona. He's coming off a win in the Goodies 300 the day before, which was his 4th straight Busch Series victory at Daytona, and wound up winning the Busch class as well, and also his Gatorade Twin 125-mile race. So really, he's the hands-on favorite. But late in the race, it was as Ned Jarrett on CBS said, the Dale and Dale show. And it was between Dale Jarrett driving for Joe Gibbs Racing at the time, and also the Intimidator, Dale Earnhardt. Now, Kyle Petty wound up winning the pole for that race. And I remember, actually I don't remember, I wasn't alive for it, but I do remember seeing about lap 130, 140 in the race, Rusty Wallace had a terrible flip in that race. And really just never had the luck on restrictor plate races in his career. Actually, he never won at Daytona or Talladega in his career. But he did have one win in the Budweiser Shootout in 1998, which I will get to in a future episode. But I actually forgot to mention, we are starting, how this is going to work is we're going to start with 20 years in the past, which since 20 years ago is 2013, is 1993. Then the next episode will be 15 years, 1998. The third installment will be 10 years ago, 2003. And the final installment will be 2008, 5 years ago. So a lot of interesting things to look forward to. But what I was saying was, and actually Al Unser, the IndyCar driver actually ran that race at Daytona, driving for Hendrick Motorsports in a fourth car, in the number 46 Valvoline car. It was actually, I think, in a net accident with Kyle Petty midway through the race. But in the end, it was Dale Earnhardt and Dale Jarrett coming down, and Dale Earnhardt led a lot of that race, but in the end, on the last lap, when Ken Squire gave it to Ned Jarrett on CBS Sports and called his son home, that brought a lot of memories back. The Dale and Dale show, as Ned Jarrett says, and Dale Jarrett hung on and won his first Daytona 500, actually his second career Cup win. And Dale Earnhardt was once again the bridesmaid at Daytona for the 500. But actually for Jeff Gordon, actually got top 5 in that race. He actually won his Gatorade Twin 125-mile race on Thursday, and that really was good. You know, he really sent a statement in that cheesy mustache of his that everybody loves. And actually, or doesn't love. He actually tried to grow it back last year in 2012. But didn't work out, but it's okay. But, you know, going on to 1993, I mean, pretty much it was a battle between, most of the year, it was a battle between Rusty Wallace and Dale Earnhardt. Rusty Wallace wound up winning 10 races for Penske that year in that number 2 Miller Genuine Draft Pontiac. And he was the short track king. He wound up winning at Bristol in the spring. He actually swept both Martinsville races. And he swept both races at the Rock that year. And he also won I think he might have he also swept both races at North Wilkesboro as well. I'm not sure about that, but I'm pretty sure he did. At least he won in the spring. But like I said, then at Talladega, like I mentioned, he had a bad flip at Daytona that year in the 500. And he had a terrible flip coming to the checkers at Talladega in the spring, and actually got tapped by Dale Earnhardt on the last lap. Officially finished 6th. And wound up flipping upside down, finishing 6th. So that was interesting. And also, another young rookie coming on by the name of Jeff Gordon. And the year before, he drove for Bill Davis Racing. Won 3 times in the number 1 car, the Baby Ruth car. So he's had a little bit of history there. And he knows his racing. And actually almost tried to go IndyCar racing. But he decided elsewhere, and he went to NASCAR. So he's here. And really, you know, 93 was a year of tragedy and triumph. And, you know, Rusty won 10 races. Dale Earnhardt won a lot as well. I'm not sure. I forget how many he won, but he won a lot of times. I know he won at Pocono in July. He won at Dover in June. He also won the Die Hard 500 in July. One of the closest finishes ever in NASCAR history, being Ernie Irvan by 5/1000ths of a second. And really, that was an interesting race. And 93 was a lot happened that year. You know, as I mentioned, Alan Kulwicki won the 92 championship that year, or actually year before. And what the sad part was, on April 1st, 1993, he was headed to Bristol on a plane, and his private plane crashed. And it really was a hard hit on the whole NASCAR community. And it was really sad when his hauler went into Bristol Motor Speedway, and he wasn't there. It really was just sad. And I remember seeing clips of actually Rusty Wallace winning that race right after he passed away at Bristol, and actually, very nicely, he actually did a Polish victory lap in memory of Alan Kulwicki, and really just really was a great memory for him to honor him. And like I said, after that great battle he had in the end of 1992. And also in July of 93, we lost another great person. We lost Davey Allison as well. And actually, he was flying around Talladega Super Speedway in his helicopter and wound up crashing, and he didn't survive. And it was very sad. Actually, the race after at Pocono that year, that was actually the first race afterwards. Like I said, Dale Earnhardt wound up winning that race. But actually, Davey Allison did win a race in 1993. He won the Richmond race in the spring, so it was his final race. But really, a lot of heavy hearts that year. And really, it was hard for the NASCAR community because they lost 2 would have been really great champions of his sport. But it's just, life moves on. You got to just keep going. And really hard, really hard for NASCAR. But like I said, it was really a big battle. But we're gonna take a quick commercial break and come back with some happier times. And really, we'll talk about how the championship battle went down, and we'll see what happens with that. So you're listening to Monday Memories 1993 here on Spreaker, so stay tuned, folks.
No place to go. Tonight I will feel so cold. I don't know what I'm looking for, but I'm still following my way. You should know I've got no regrets. One day we'll meet again.
And we're back after a short commercial break. Actually, a break, not commercial. I'm being a little too professional there, but that's okay. But, going back to 1993, a lot of things happened in 93. Actually, here are some movies that came out. Jurassic Park came out, Mrs. Doubtfire, Schindler's List, Groundhog Day, The Sandlot. I'm a baseball fan, so I enjoy that. Also, in sports, the Toronto Blue Jays beat the Philadelphia Phillies in 6 games in the World Series. Kind of a heartbreak for Phillies fans when Joe Carter hit that walk-off home run off of Mitch Williams in the 9th inning, but that's just a break sometimes. That's baseball. Also, the Dallas Cowboys beat the Buffalo Bills in the Super Bowl, and I remember watching clips that was actually the Super Bowl when the Leon Lett, the guy who actually was running back going for a touchdown, and then one of the Bills players came back and actually knocked it out of his hands, and it was a touchback, but still the Cowboys dominated and won 52-17. Also in March was Jim Valvano, the legendary coach, actually gave his famous "Don't give up, don't ever give up" speech at the inaugural ESPY Awards in March. And sadly, Coach Valvano passed away in April and didn't get to see, but he fought a really hard battle. And also that year, I think, actually, Valvano won the Arthur Ashe Courage Award. Actually, Arthur Ashe passed away in February, so that was kind of a hard thing for the sports community as well. But, it was a really rough year. So, that happens sometimes. But, we have to move on, like I keep saying. But going back to 1993, it was really, like I said, it was really a dominant year. It was a really great year, racing-wise. Actually, I did the year in review show with Sean I did a year in review show with him, and I actually forgot to mention James Hilton, who actually had his last ARCA race this year in 2013. He's 79 years young, by the way. And actually, 1993 was the last year that James Hilton made his last Winston Cup Series start. And like I said, he attempted a couple within the last 20 years. Attempted a couple races, but he didn't make them. I actually remember a memory that comes to mind is the 2007 Daytona 500. He almost got in, but he had clutch issues. Kind of didn't really do it, but it happens. But sometimes that's what racing happens. Something breaks, or there's nothing out of your control that you can do. But that's how it is. So no, but going back, actually in March as well, was the storm of the century, March 12th to the 15th. And what happened was a storm that came up the East Coast actually brought killer tornadoes to the Florida region, and also even the Florida Panhandle it got up to 6 inches of snow that year, and that was crazy. And then actually that weekend, the Winston Cup was supposed to run at Atlanta as well as the Busch Series, and actually Atlanta area got 6 to 8 inches of snow, which actually had to force NASCAR to postpone the race to the next week. And actually the NASCAR Busch Series Slick 5300 got postponed in November and championship weekend, so just shows you Mother Nature sometimes isn't very kind, but it happens. So actually the next week, I know Mark Martin dominated most of the first half of that race, and actually had an engine problem, and then came down to a typical fuel mileage race, and Jeff Gordon was leading late, but he had to pit for gas, and actually Morgan Shepherd, driving for the Wood Brothers, got his last Cup victory. And actually, Morgan Shepherd is still racing to this day in the NASCAR Nationwide Series. So it's pretty cool to see. And like I said, I guess you could say he won the Atlanta Blizzard 500 of 1993. So, but it was good to see him win that year. And so, early in the year, it was a couple different winners. And then we hit the summer months, and really Dale Earnhardt had his consistency. He actually won the Coca-Cola 600, came back from I think he came down from a lap or two, and came back to win that race. And then in June, Kyle Petty absolutely dominated the June race at Pocono and really just put a whooping on him that day in that mellow yellow car. And with that hair of his, which I don't think anyone will ever forget. I was alive back then. And then the next week, Ricky Rudd won a race as well. He won a fuel mileage race at Michigan in the number 5 car. Actually, it was his last year for Hendrick Motorsports in the number 5. But that actually went to go, he'd go on to own his own team the next couple of years. And Terry Labonte in 1994 would vacate that ride. So, because Terry Labonte was driving for Billy Hagan that year, the number 14 Kellogg's Cornflakes car, but didn't have much success. And also, it was a really rough year for Bill Elliott as well, because he came so close in 1992 with Tim Brewer as his crew chief. And he just had no luck that year. Just in that June, I don't know if it was like a hangover, like today you have that Chase hangover from finishing second in the points. But he had absolutely no luck at all that year. But it happens sometimes. Racing doesn't go your way. Like in 92, Rusty Wallace and Dale Earnhardt did not have good luck. I think Dale Earnhardt won once in 1992, but he definitely showed, he was coming back with Andy Petrie as his crew chief, and kind of a changing of the guard, like I said, with 1992. But also in 93, like I said, the Talladega race. Now, also the road course races were really good that year. And actually at Sonoma, Dale Earnhardt was leading that race late. He actually got into a little scuffle with the lap car. Actually, Tommy Kendall, who was actually driving Alan Kowicki's car, ironically, and actually took him out, Dale Earnhardt. So it was down to 3 guys. It was down to Ernie Irvin in the number 4 car for Morgan McClure, Ricky Rudd in the number 5 Tide Ride at that time, and then Jeff Bodine in that 15 car for Bud Moore. So in that, if you ever go up on YouTube and look up the finish of that race, that was an awesome finish and just an awesome race overall. Just the typical guys, and actually Jeff Bodine prevailed and won the race. But like I said, you have to watch the finish of that race. That was definitely that was road course racing right there at its prime of that era. And then also Watkins Glen was another one that Dale Earnhardt almost won. And it was coming down late in the race. Now Mark Martin's dominated all day. He had some issues on pit road with I think it was one of the pit crew guys had a problem with the tires or during the one pit stop at the Jack. I'm not sure I don't remember. I actually saw the race. I don't remember. And I remember Mark Martin was working his way back. And what happened was that going up into the S's, that Kyle Petty and Dale Earnhardt made contact. Both of them spun, and who's the guy takes the lead? Mark Martin. And Mark wound up winning, which would start by winning 3 in a row at Watkins Glen. And the guy who finished second that probably no one will ever get is Wally Dallenbach Jr., the number 16 for Roush Racing at the time, the Keystone Light car. So, yeah, actually that would be actually Wally's second runner-up finish. He actually finished second to Mark Martin once again in 1995, driving for Bill Davis Racing at the time, the number 22 MB&A Pontiac that year. Actually, excuse me, that Ward Burton would actually win that car later on in the year. So, that was interesting, but, that was really a great year for road course racing and also short track racing as well. Both Martinsville races were really good, and then another race I'm going to bring up. I know I mentioned Dale Earnhardt won the spring Dover race. The fall Dover race was interesting. I know there was a wreck late between the leaders. And they used to run 500 miles at Dover. Think of that. 500 miles at Dover on the asphalt. And that track, I would not want to be a driver and blow a tire and go slamming and right into the wall. That is scary. Just how high that track looks back in its time. I was intimidated. No pun intended. And wow, and Rusty actually won the fall race of Dover. That's one I have to watch that's on my list of races to watch. but I will get to that at some point when I get some free time watching the races. But we're going to take another short commercial break, and we're going to wrap up the rest of 1993, and we'll see who came out. Was it Rusty Wallace or Dale Earnhardt? So stay tuned.
Traveling in a freighter combi on a hippie trailhead full of zombies. I met a strange lady, she made me nervous. She took me in and gave me breakfast. And she said, do you come from a land down under? Where women go and men wonder. Can't you hear the thunder? You better run, you better take cover. Buying bread from a man in Brussels. He was 6'4" and full of muscle. I said, do you speak my language? He just smiled and gave me a Vegemite sandwich.
And we're back after a short break. Kind of got over ahead of myself there last time with the commercial break, but still, maybe I'll be in radio Sunday, who knows. But we'll see. But, like I said about the 93 season, let's go back to some other events that happened in 1993. Also, in racing, Emerson Fittipaldi won the Indy 500 that year and really created a big controversy in Victory Lane. He actually drank his own orange juice, not drinking the traditional milk in Victory Lane, so that really sparked some interest. Also, the Montreal Canadiens won the Stanley Cup by beating the Los Angeles Kings 4-1, and also rookie Tim Steele won the ARCA Championship that year. He won a couple times. He won at Talladega, Pocono, and a few other races. And actually, I just want to say something quick about the ARCA season, is that actually that 1993, that Jeff Purvis actually won bookends on the races. He won the season opener at Daytona and also the season finale at Atlanta. So really, that was a great year. And I also want to let's talk about shortly. Actually, we'll save it for later about the 1993 Busch Series, and I will elaborate a little bit on that. But going back to the 1993 season, now also 93 was the first time that the Winston Cup Series ever ran at New Hampshire Motor Speedway. They actually ran a 300-lap race, and Rusty Wallace had a terrible qualifying run in that race. Had to start 33rd, but he worked his way up, and he actually dominated that race, and sadly, it was Davey Allison's last Cup race as well. I think he finished third that day, and Mark Morton, I think, finished runner-up to Rusty. But yeah, like I said, that was Davey Allison's last race. And sadly, and actually, going back to Alan Kulwicki, actually Jeff Bodine actually bought Alan Kulwicki's team and ran it himself. So as he would run in the next couple of years, pretty much until he stopped running full time the NASCAR Winston Cup Series. And also, there was a time also in August that Mark Morton was on an absolute roll when he won at Watkins Glen in August. I think he won 4 straight. He won the next week at Phoenix, and he also won the week at Bristol. The next week, the Bristol night race in 1993. And actually I think he had a tire go down there in that race, and I think he got down a couple laps, and he worked his way back up, and with about 15, 20 laps to go, he passed Rusty Wallace and won the race. Then the next week, he won the Mountain Dew Southern 500. Actually got rain shortened, but he won the race. Actually, I think it was shortened due to darkness, but yeah, Mark Morton won 4 straight Cup races in a row. And I'm pretty sure in a modern era, that is still a record to this day. 4 straight Cup wins, which was most recent by Jimmy Johnson in 2007 in the Chase. So that's interesting. And, it went through the summer months, and really, like I said, it was all between Dale Earnhardt and Rusty Wallace. And like I said, Rusty won a lot, but it didn't matter. The problem with Rusty was either he won or he wrecked or had an engine problem. Good example was Pocono in June. Lap 4 of the race, or early in the going, had an engine go. Really hurt him. And Dale Earnhardt got top 10 out of that, and that really helped his points. And back with the old Cup point system, consistency didn't matter. There was no chase format. We didn't have a 10-race playoff. Didn't work like that. And really, just heading into the last couple races of the season, actually, you had Phoenix, of course, heading into there. You had the Rock, which was won by Rusty Wallace again. He actually swept both Rock races at Rockingham that year. Actually, Mark Martin won the Phoenix race that year, the Slick 50 500K. It's kilometers, 312 laps. So heading into the last race of the season, Dale Earnhardt had the points lead. I think all he had to do was finish 19th or better, or 20th. I'm not exactly entirely sure what he had to do, but I know he had to finish something or better. And I have seen that race, the 1993 Hooters 500, the final race of the season. And it was down between those two guys. And toward the end of that race, Dale Earnhardt did lead. I think he did lead a lap that race. But all he had to do was just have a nice, smooth day, and he was the champ. And actually, late in the going, Darrell Waltrip was leading that race late, but he actually was trying to save gas, enough gas to go to the finish, but he just couldn't. He did save enough gas, but Rusty Wallace was faster. And Rusty wound up winning the finale, but it was not enough. And Dale Earnhardt got his six-pack by winning his sixth Winston Cup Series championship in 1993. And really, it was a good redemption for Mr. Earnhardt, because, like I said, 92 William would win in 92. And really, he won the Coke 600 that year in some controversy because of supposedly speeding. Other competitors thought he was speeding off pit road, but we'll never know what happened because he won the race. So that's all that matters. A win's a win, unless NASCAR says otherwise. So, that was a great year in racing, and like I said, and a lot of tragedy that year with Davey Allison, Alan Kulwicki. And I actually also want to say that that Die Hard 500 that year, when Neil Bonnet ran a second RCR car at Talladega. Actually had a really bad flip in that race. But, and then the story with Neil. He had a bad accident at Daytona in 1994 and sadly passed away. And, I look back at 93 and really, a lot of stuff happened in 93. Like I said, I just want to mention this quick. There were some crazy things that happened in 93. Like I said, with the weather. That was ridiculous. I don't think I've ever seen that in my life. And I want to just talk briefly about the 93 Busch season. Now, coming off the year before, 1992 for the Busch Series was probably one of the closest battles ever in the history of the Busch Series. I think it was between Joe Nemechek and defending NASCAR Busch Series champion Bobby Labonte. And really, it was down to those two guys, and Joe Nemechek hung on. He only got 2 wins that year, but he hung on and did it. Showing that, it was a front row Joe could get the job done at the time. And really, like I said, the Slick 50 300 Busch race was running on championship weekend in November. And actually, Ward Burton won that race that year. He won the finale. And actually, it was a battle mostly between David Green in the 44 car and Steve Grissom in the 31, and really, Grissom wound up prevailing. He got a couple wins that year. He won at Hickory earlier in the season. He also won at Milwaukee earlier in the year. David Green, I'm not sure if David Green won a race or not, but there's some really good races from that year. Actually, Chuck Bouna, 1990 NASCAR Busch Series champ, actually made his return to victory lane at Martinsville in the fall. That was actually, it wasn't on the weekend that they ran the Cup Series on the fall. It was on a weekend, an off weekend for the Cup Series, and they run in Martinsville. For some reason, it was called the Advanced Auto Parts 500, even though it was a 300-lap race, mainly because there was a 200, I think, either a 200-lap late model race afterwards. But 93 was an interesting year, and it was good to see a Georgia boy like Steve Grissom win the championship. He's been trying for years. And really was good to see him win. And he would actually go on to race in the NASCAR Winston Cup Series full-time in 1994. And also, just a couple other things from 1993. The Florida State Seminoles win the national championship in college football. Also, the bombing of the World Trade Center happened in February. Also, the Bulls won their third straight championship with Phil Jackson and Michael Jordan. And also, the late night show with David Letterman debuted on CBS in September. So that was an interesting year or so. And also some other deaths I want to get to quick. was Frank Zappa and Conway Twitty. So, a lot happened in 93, but tune in next week for our next episode. We will go back to 1998. So, thanks for listening and have a great night.